All right, so we're gonna do the Power BI tutorial. What we need to do is we need to download this file and that file on module 7 of the homepage. So we'll download our source files, our sales files from 5 or 6 different states. And then the other one is a managers file. Has managers by zip code. Oop. Okay, so we got both of them downloaded. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my download folder, show you that they're there. So there's my source files. It's in a zipped folder, compressed. And this one is a free floating file. So what I want to do is I'm going to create a, I'm going to right click on desktop, open a new window. And I'm going to create a file, a folder over here. If you're on Westminster anywhere, you want to use the H drive. So maybe what I'll do is I'll simulate using the H drive. So you want to find your H drive. It'll have parentheses H colon. And then we'll put it in here somewhere. So let me widen this up a little bit. What I need to do is get this big wide area out here. If I click here, I click on a folder. If I click out here, I don't click on nothing. So let me right click out here. I want new. I want new folder. Okay, so I have my new folder down there. So what I'm doing is I'm gonna make this skinnier. Click on my new, I'm gonna right click or click on there to change the name to Power BI. And I'll call it tutorial. Then I'll double click to open it. Okay, now it's open and you can see the path to it. So if you were to do this on your H drive, you would see an H here and then a colon and then / Power BI tutorial. Okay, then what I want to do is I want to drag this EMT 1360 Excel file. This is the file that has the managers and zip codes in it. And then I want to drag, I don't want to drag the zip folder. What I want to do is I want to double click on the zip folder to unzip it, to uncompress it. And then I want to drag the uncompressed file with the same name into my Power BI tutorial folder. Okay, and we'll take a quick look at them. We'll take a real quick look at them, the files, and you'll see that this file is just oops, I think I got the wrong one here. Let me close that one out. Okay, so you see it's got zip codes and it's got manager names. Okay, so that's our manager table. Now, what we're doing here is we're looking at data of a fictional company. And if this person leaves the company, what we're gonna have to do is replace this person's name with the new manager of the company, right? So, and then we have our source files. Again, this is unzipped. Let's double click on that and look at our source files. And we'll open up a smaller one. I think the smaller one is New Mexico. Yeah, we'll open up New Mexico, it's smaller. They're all identical except the length. Okay, so we have New Mexico on the tab here, right? Enable editing. Okay, so we have New Mexico on the tab. Then in column A, we have the date. Column B, we have the stored zip code. Column C, we have the product code, payment type, units sold in this particular transaction, amount of sale, revenue discount, and then the cost of goods sold. Okay. Now, this is the New Mexico table. The California, Arizona, Oregon, Washington tables are all identical, right? They're all identical, except they have different data, right? But they have the same column names and the same number of columns, okay? So what Power BI is going to do is going to stack these state files on top of each other. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add. So when we stack in Power BI Desktop, we'll automatically also add a new column called state. And what will happen is in Power BI Desktop, the name of the worksheet will populate this new column A with the new name called name, right? And this column will be moved over to B, B will move to B to C, C will be moved to D, et cetera, et cetera. So Power BI Desktop is going to move all these columns one to the right and then add a new column A, which will be populated with the name New Mexico. And it'll do that with Colorado, with Arizona, with California, Oregon, and Washington. Okay, so that's our data. Now what we want to do is we want to import it. Cancel. We're going to import this data. We're going to first import the manager table, and then we're going to import the source files as a folder of Excel files. Okay. So we don't need this anymore. So I've opened up Power BI Desktop. If you're a Westminster student, you'll have a license to Power BI, so you can actually install it on your PC laptop. If you have a Mac, unfortunately, you can't, there's no Power BI Desktop for Macs, so you'd have to use Westminster Anywhere. So you want to open this up in Westminster Anywhere, and if you're doing that, your files are going to be on your H drive. People using the classroom computer, their files are on the H drive. People using their laptop can put the files on their C drive like I did. Okay, so let's get data. So we're going to get data from an Excel workbook. And let me go to my C drive. I've already done this once, but I'm going to go to my C drive here and click on Power BI tutorial. I'm going to grab this Excel file when I opened up and showed you that was managers and zip codes. We're going to open that. Power BI is going to open it up in Power Query Editor. You might have recognized that from Excel if you've done Power Query Editor in Excel before. Okay, this is kind of like a bridge between Power BI Desktop and Power Query Editor. So what you want to do is you want to check mark managers. Okay, so you got to remember an Excel file is not a flat file. It could have tables defined on a worksheet. It could have cells, named cells. It could have multiple worksheets. All of those are objects, right? And we want the managers table, the list of zip codes and manager names. So we're going to load that data. We'll transform it in a second after we bring in the okay, just got to wait, I guess. Okay, so if you come over, if you look at fields here, you'll see the managers table, managers and zip codes. We're going to change the summation symbol here means that zip codes are numbers, but zip codes aren't numbers. They are names of places on a map. So we have to code them as strings or give them a data type text, because if you have five-digit numbers and they're coded as strings of characters, or they have the data type text, then Power BI Desktop will assume they're locations on a map or names of regions on a map. Okay, so if we click on this, you'll see the managers table here, and this is kind of like equivalent to the relationships canvas that we did in Access, right? So we only have one table in here, and it's called managers. And then you can look at managers by clicking on the data thing right there, the data icon, the table icon. And you can see zip codes and managers there. And then this is going to be eventually where we put our visualizations, our report. That's where we're going to make our dashboard. Okay, so let's go get some more data. This time we're going to click on more. Power BI has a pretty big program. It's got a lot of AI built into it, so it takes a little while sometimes. There it is, popped up. And we want to get data from a folder, right? So you want to click on folder and then connect. And we want to click to browse. So we're going to go down here to the C drive. There's the C drive. You'll be looking for the H drive if you're on Westminster Anywhere or you're in a classroom computer. And we want to look for Power BI tutorial. And there's my Power BI tutorial. And then we can't go any further. This is a terminal folder. There's no other subfolders in here. The one that's in this particular folder is 6 Excel files. So we're going to click on that folder, right? And then click OK. That's the path to it. Again, if you're doing this on Westminster Anywhere or in the classroom computer, that'll be an H. If you created this folder on the H drive. All right, so now we're going to click OK. All right, now we want to click transform data. Okay, we're going to click transform data. And the Power Query editor comes up. So let me get this fitted into the screen here. Okay, so we got Power BI Desktop in the background, and we've got the Power Query editor. So the first thing we want to do is we want to edit the managers table. The first thing we imported. Okay, so we want to change the data type to text, right? Text data type. So the way you can do that is you can click on the 1, 2, 3 here. And the default, when Power BI sees numbers, it, of course, with no decimals, it will, of course, make sense to, select the data type whole number. But we want text because these are zip codes, and zip codes are names of places on a map or locations on a map, right? So in Microsoft products, in SQL situations like Access, Excel, and Power BI Desktop, things that are coded as strings will be left justified by default, and the numbers will be right justified. So we can look at it, see that because it's on the left, like the manager names, then the data types are correct. All right, so let's go ahead and we're done with that. So now let's go to this EMT 1360 source files. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to rename it sales data. So I'm going to come over here and call this sales data. All right, and hit enter. That changes the name over here in this query, right? And then the next thing we want to do is we're going to right click on content, and we're going to hide everything but content. Basically what we're doing is we're stripping out all of the, we want just the data. So we're going to strip everything else out. And there's a lot of structure in Excel files. So we're gonna remove all that structure. So we're going to remove other columns. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a custom column. We want a new column here. And notice our only column right now is content, right? So what we want to do is we want to add a column, a custom column. And we can name this whatever we want to name it, right? We can name it custom, or we can name it George. We're going to name it Get Excel Objects, right? And down here, we're going to type Excel dot, whoop, worksheets, workbook, Excel.workbook. Okay, and then we're gonna click parentheses, and notice we only have one available column. That's content, right? That makes sense, right? So we only have one column over here. We're gonna double click on content, and then we're gonna click on true. We're gonna do comma true. Okay, because we have headers, right? And we'll hit OK. Okay. Then we're going to click on content, and we're going to remove content. Okay, now we're seeing we got tables here, right? We're seeing we got tables here. Okay, so what you want to do now is there's a button here with arrows pointing away from each other, right? So this is gonna pull in a bunch of columns. I'm gonna click that. And if you leave this check marked, the name of this column will be getObjects.name, right? So we're gonna uncheck it. So these are the names of the new columns, right? And we're gonna hit OK. Oh, there we go. All right, cool. All right, so what we're gonna do next is we want to keep the name and the data. We're gonna get rid of everything else. So we're gonna right click, remove other columns. Okay, so this is our data column. This is gonna be the data. These are the columns in Excel. These are the names of those worksheets, right? Remember I showed you the New Mexico worksheet name at the bottom of Excel? These are the names of each worksheet. And so we're gonna right click and we're gonna rename this state. We're gonna change the name to state. And again, these are the names of the worksheets that contain the data over here. So the next thing we want to do is we want to click on the two arrows to expand data, because we're just interested in the data, right? So notice that Power BI has unchecked this because it remembers what we had done before. We got the date, right? Date was in column A. It's not going to be column B because the name of the state is in column A, right? So let's be in column B. That'll be in column C, all the way down here to cost of goods sold, right? That should all look familiar. Cool, right? So we have cost of goods sold in the final column. We have the revenue discount, amount of sale, units, payment type, product type, store zip code, date, and state, right? Real quick, I'm going to show you, I'm going to sort. Here's my list of my steps over here too, right? So the next one's going to be a sort. I'm going to sort descending. So you can see Washington's in there, right? Washington in every state in that folder that we created on the H drive, every one of those states, Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, New Mexico, and Arizona, they're in the data set now, right? We have Washington on one end, and we have Arizona on the other end, right? And then we got California, New Mexico, Nevada, Oregon in between, right? Okay, so the next thing we have to do is we have to change the data types. Okay, we want to change the data types. So we're gonna change this, right? This ABC 1, 2, 3. We're gonna change that to text. We're gonna change date to date, right? We're gonna change store zip code, product type, and payment type. I'm holding on the control button. I'm gonna do all these at the same time. We're gonna change them to text. So I'm right clicking. When you're doing multiple columns, you can right click and then let's see, change type to text. So they should all be ABCs, right? And then units sold should be whole number. Amount of sale and cost of goods sold, they need to be fixed decimal. Fixed decimal in Power BI Desktop is dollars, right? Dollars fixed decimal. And then this should be percentage right here, percentage. Okay. Now, one other thing, I want to match the name of the zip code in the sales data table to the name here. So I'm going to change this to zip code, right? I'm going to change that to zip code. Then in the sales data table, I'm going to change it to zip code. So they're the same name. What's going to end up happening is we're going to use Power BI Desktop to connect this really long table now with all 6 states in it stacked on top of each other, right? That's what Power BI did here. It stacked all those Excel files on top of each other. We're going to connect that to the managers table. And when we do that, when we connect these two together, we're basically going to get a new column in sales data. We're going to get a column called manager, right? So every time there's, for each of these zip codes, we're going to get, this zip code will be matched with the manager's name corresponding to that same zip code, right? So we're going to get a new column when we connect these two together, right? So here we did a stack to stack Arizona on top of California, those two on top of Nevada, those three on top of Oregon. And so we got a stack of 6 states, right? And then we're going to add a column. And that's when we do that, that's called a union. So we're going to union the manager's table with the sales data, right? All right, cool. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we want to build a new column in the sales data table. And that column is going to calculate the revenue discount in dollars from amount of sale. So for example, on this first transaction, there's no revenue discount, right? So the net sale, or you call it the net revenue if you want. What are we going to call it? We're going to call it net revenue. So when you take 0% off, you're paying $4.95. But on this one, you get 10% off, right? So 10% off of $19.80 is $1.98. So we're going to subtract $1.98 from that. So we're going to create a new column called net revenue. So we want to go up here to add a column tab and then create a custom column, right? We've already done this with that get objects one, right? But this one we're going to call net revenue. And we're going to multiply the amount of sale times the revenue discount. Now this right here is not the net revenue. This is the dollar value of the discount. So if you sold something for $10 and somebody got 10% off, this one right here would be that dollar, right? So we could proceed in one of two ways. We could subtract that from amount of sale, right? So this is the amount of sale. So if you sold something for $10, you got 10% off, that right there would be $1, right? So $1 subtracting from 10 is $9. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to use to factor out the amount of sale, right? So we could factor out the amount of sale and just do 1 minus the revenue discount, right? You can just do 1 minus the revenue discount. Okay. So amount of sale times 1 minus the revenue discount does the same thing, right? So if we get 0% off, this right here is a fancy way of saying 1. So the amount of sale is multiplied by 1. But if the revenue discount is 10%, right, then this is 90%. And so we're taking we're multiplying 90% times the amount of sale. Okay. Now the last thing I want to do is we want to round it to 2 decimal places, right? So I'm going to put a comma minus 2 at the end, right? I just put a comma minus 2 at the end. Then we go to the beginning. I'm going to put a parenthesis in front of it. And then I'm in between the equal sign and the parenthesis. So right now I'm going to do number dot round. And this kind of has a Python feel to it, right? Has a Python feel to it. In Python, if we wanted to round, we had to import the NumPy library and we typed mp.round, right? So this kind of has that feel. Now I got a green check mark here, so that means I did it right. So let's just review. This rounds, right? This will round all the numbers in this new column. And this new column is the amount of sale, right? The amount of sale. The amount of sale times 1 minus the revenue discount. And we're going to round it to 2 decimal places, all right? So we have number.round parenthesis. Notice that parenthesis shows you've got that parenthesis there, right? They go together. This bracket goes with that bracket. This parenthesis here goes with that parenthesis. And this bracket goes with that bracket. So this kind of has an SQL feel to it, right? Kind of has an SQL feel to it. And then we got a comma to close parenthesis. We'll hit OK, and we get this new column out here, right? Now this makes sense, right? This person got 0% off, so they paid $4.95. This person here, though, got 10% off in 1980, and 10% off in 1980 is 1782, right? Because they're subtracting $1.98 from that, and $1.98 subtracted from that is 1782. Now we want to change this to dollars fixed decimal, and because we want to keep our choices at a minimum when we're building a dashboard. If we have too many columns, it can get confusing. We don't really need this and this anymore. Now, in the future, if you want to modify your dashboard, all your charts and tables in your dashboard, if you want to modify it and you want to add the revenue discount, you can come back and you can change it, edit this query so that the revenue discount will show up. But for now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to, we're not deleting them. We're just removing these columns from view. Okay. So just make sure we got everything. We got net revenue in dollars. We got COGS, cost of goods sold in dollars. We have units with the data type whole numbers, 1, 2, 3. For payment type, product, and zip code, we have strings or a data type of text with ABC left of the field names. Then we got date with a calendar, and we got state with ABC. So it looks like we're all good, and we can do what? We can click on home and then close and apply. So all that was necessary to import data, right? All that was necessary to import the data into Power BI, right? And we're going to end up with 2 tables over here. We're going to end up with 2 tables over here after it's all said and done. It's working on the California data right now. There's Nevada. It's important all of this data. There's quite a bit of it, right? There's Oregon, and Washington is one of the biggest ones. I think you can assume that maybe the company started in Washington, and then it moved into Oregon, then California. Now it's in Nevada, Arizona, and New Mexico, right? So we should have 2 tables over here, manager's table and the sales data table. And we got cost of goods sold, we got date, we got net revenue, payment type, product type, state, units, and zip code. Notice zip code does not have a summation symbol next to it. Units does because it's whole numbers, right? State, product, payment type don't have the summation symbol. Date has the calendar next to it. Cost of goods sold and net revenue have the summation symbol next to it. So these things are numbers. These 3 things are numbers, right? And then zip code in the sales data table is spelled and capitalized just like it is in the manager's table, right? So the next thing you want to do is you want to click on this model. And in Access, you click on Database Tools, then you click on Relationships, and you can view the relationship canvas, right? In Power BI Desktop, I think 2 tables will be connected together if they have a column in common, right? So if you click on this play button right there, this arrow, you'll see that zip code in the manager's table is connected to sales data table via the zip code column, right? You see that? Zip code have the same capitalization and the same spelling. They have a space in between zip and code. So I'm thinking that's why Power BI is connecting these 2 tables together. Sometimes that's nice, but I like to connect them myself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this. And when you have like multiple tables with overlapping primary keys, then Power BI will try to connect them all when you don't need them all connected, right? So what I like to do is I like to do it myself. So I'm gonna click and hold down the zip code, and I'm gonna drop it on zip code to show you how they connect, right? And if you double click on it, you'll see the relationship. And this kind of looks like Access, right? In Access, we're connecting zip code. In Access, we'd have zip code to zip code, right? So zip code from a sales data table and zip code to the manager's table. So zip code and zip code are both gray, right? So they're being connected to each other, right? And we're doing a many-to-one, right? A many-to-one merge, right? A many-to-one merge or union or joint. But yeah, it's a joint, right? A joint. You're joining the two tables together. Okay. All right. So that's that. Let's do one real quick thing too here. I'm going to move this over and compress it just a little bit, try to get it as compressed as possible. I'm going to hit the property thing. And then I'm going to go through and just double check managers, data type text, format text, zip code, text, cost of goods sold, fixed decimal currency. I'm going to change the decimal places to 2. Okay, and then it should say English United States in currency format. Then I'm going to check date, and it's date. You can shorten the date if you want to short date instead of that long date. Okay, and then net revenue should be 2 decimals, currency. If you do this, then you'll have better looking tables in your dashboard. Payment type should be text. Product type should be text. State, text. Units are whole numbers. So 0 decimal places. And then zip code. Zip code is text, right? And there's nothing else below. Okay, so we're all set up. This is called your data architecture, right? So what will happen is if we have like 2 years of sales data from these 6 states, and imagine this, you have a bunch of sales during the day, and at night you close out your registers or your apps on your iPad, whatever you're using to process transactions. And maybe at the end of the day, all those transactions are dumped into the Excel files, right? They're dumped into these Excel files. In our source folder, right? So every night, the new sales are dumped into these files here. The files get bigger, right? They get bigger. So every day you're going to see the size of these Excel files get bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And so the next morning, what you'll want to do is you want to click refresh. And what it'll do is it'll import all that new data from those longer Excel files, right? If you had a manager swap, right? If a manager got fired and somebody else was hired, it would import the name of the new manager, right? And then it brings in all that new data from the sales files. Okay, so that's what you'd want to do every day. You could probably have it set up to refresh every day, right? Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we're going to create some measures. And the first measure is going to be called sales type. So what you want to do is you want to click on the data table here on the left, right? You want to click on that, and then you want to click on sales data. We're not going to add a column to the managers table. We're going to add a column to the sales data, right? And so what you're going to end up doing is you're going to come up here to table tools, and you're going to click new column. Okay, we're going to click new column. And the name of the new column is going to be sales type. Okay. Type equals, and then we're going to type if, and this kind of feels like Excel right here, right? If, but instead of typing like cell A3, we're gonna type sales So we can pull up this is the table. Sales data is the table, right? The icon is the entire table. Sales data with the bracket COGS. This is the sales data table, and this is a column inside of sales data. So again, this has an SQL fill to it, right? In SQL, this would be sales.cogs, right? This would be sales data.date, sales data.net revenue, sales data.payment type, right? So it's got a SQL fill to it. So what we want to do is we want to go to units, right? And anywhere units are greater than or less than 6, we're going to call it a retail transaction. The difference between retail and wholesale is if you're in a state, if you operate in a state where there's no sales tax, then the customer nor the business that's going to buy from you and then resell at their store neither pay sales tax. But if you're in Utah, we have a sales tax. And if you don't have a contractor's license, say at Costco, or if you don't have a contractor's account at Costco or Lowe's or Home Depot, then you have to pay sales tax. But if you have a contractor account, you don't pay sales tax, right? So when you don't pay sales tax, you're a wholesale customer, right? Only final goods and services are taxed with sales tax, right? So if you're a retail customer, you pay sales tax, right? So if our units are less than 6, it's a retail customer. If it's more than 6, it's a wholesale customer, right? And then we hit enter, and we'll get a new column right here. Now we could have done this. We could have done this this new column in the Power Query editor when we created this column, right? These two things are equivalent. We could have done this here, but we did it in the Power Query editor. Although we did this here, we could have done Power Query editor, right? All right. All right, cool. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we want measures. Now, measures are different than columns. Measures allow you to sum by category, right? So if we wanted to compare our net revenue, our total net revenue for retail sales versus wholesale sales, we'd need a measure. So we're going to create a measure called total revenue. So we're going to click on column tools again. Well, table tools. Click on table tools. We want to click on the new measure, right? This will not create a new column. It'll allow us to create subtotals, right? And our new measure is going to be called total revenue, right? And all we're going to do is sum net revenue. So sales data, right? And I'm going to click on sales data net revenue. Okay, so if this were SQL, you would write sum, right, in your query, parentheses sales dot net revenue, right? Close parentheses. So we're going to sum sales data net revenue. So we're going to sum the net revenue column in the sales data table, right? And this will allow us to create subtotals. A subtotal for maybe units sold, right? So we'll have a total for 1 unit sold, for 2 units sold. We'll have a total for 3 units sold, or we can do it by payment type or product type or zip code even, but there's a lot of zip codes. So I don't know if you want to do that. Now, when I hit enter, you're going to see it pop up over here. See that total revenue with a calculator next to it? When it has a calculator next to it, it's not a new column, right? Now we want to build another new measure. This one's going to be called total cost of goods sold. Total cost of goods sold. And again, it's equal to the sum of what? Sales data, and then click on cost of goods sold. Okay, and then you close parenthesis, and you hit enter. Okay, and then it shows up right here, total cost of goods sold. Now, the next one we're going to do is gross profit. So again, you want to click on Table Tools, New Measure. And in this new measure, we're going to do gross profit. And gross profit is total revenue. Total revenue. Now, total revenue, remember, is a sum, right? So at this moment, gross profit is a sum as well, right? But then we're going to add to it, we're going to subtract off from the total revenue the total cost of goods sold, right? Both of these are sum measures, right? So we'll be able to calculate sums for gross profit. And we hit enter, and it shows up right here. Gross profit. So it's got a calculator next to it, right? Total cost of goods sold's got a calculator next to it. Total revenue's got a cost of goods or a calculator next to it. All right, and our final one is gross profit percentage. So again, click on Table Tools, and then click New Measure. And this one's going to be gross profit percentage. Now, gross profit percentage can be computed by taking the gross profit, right? We can divide it by either total cost of goods sold or total revenue. We're going to do it as a function or as a ratio of total revenue, right? So we're going to do total revenue. We're going to do this total revenue. Okay, and hit enter. Okay, we have all the measures we need. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the model by clicking on this model here, these tables that are connected to each other. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to go through our table again, right? I'm going to go through this table again. So cost of goods sold, 2 decimal places. Net revenue, fixed decimal, 2 decimal places. These are all good, right? Units, whole number, 0 decimal places, zip code, text, right? We already checked all those. I'm going to go down here to gross profit. I'm going to click on gross profit. It's got currency, and then I'm going to limit it to 2 decimal places. Okay. Same thing with gross profit percentage, but gross profit percentage is a percentage, right? So I'm going to change it to percentage. And then I'm going to change it to 2 decimal places, right? So I got percentage and 2 decimal places. Total cost of goods sold is currency, but I'm going to change it to 2 decimal places. Okay, and then total revenue is 2 decimal places too. Okay, so we got currency, 2 decimal places for that. Currency, 2 decimal places for that. Percentage with 2 decimal places. Currency with 2 decimal places. And then their other ones should be good, right? So that's all good, right? Now let's go to the report button. So I clicked on that report button. This is where our dashboard is going to be, right? The first thing I want to build is a map. Okay, first thing I'm going to build is a map. So I'm going to click in the canvas area. I'm going to find the thing that looks like a map or a globe. And it should just say map. So I'm going to click on that, right? I'm going to move it over on the right side and then expand it out a little bit. Okay. Now I'm going to create a map of gross profit by zip code. So I got the map. I click on gross profit, and I'm going to click on zip code. And the bigger the dot, the bigger the sales, right? So our biggest stores are in Oregon and Washington. You can see that by the size of the dots, right? You can see that by the size of the dots. Small dots have less gross profit. Big dots have big gross profit, right? So there's our first one, right? Now the next one I'm going to do is I'm going to create clustered bar chart. So if you're reading the instructions for the project and it says, all right, create a clustered bar chart, what do? You start right here and you look for a clustered bar chart. Clustered bar chart, right? So I'm going to click on clustered bar chart. Now this is a tall one. So I'm gonna move it to the left. I'm going to draw it all the way to the top, right? And in this clustered bar chart, we're going to do gross profit and manager. So I'm going to do manager's name. And the manager is basically an additional column in this table, right? Because we connected this table to this table via zip codes, right? So I'm going to click on manager and then I'm going to click on gross profit. Now, the cool thing about this chart is that if I were to click on Arcella Stacy, if I click on that bar, it filters. That's weird. There you go. It'll filter and it'll show you where her store is. It'll give you the zip code and her gross profit, right? So that's kind of cool. Then we can click on Jan Petrie. Her store is in Portland, downtown Portland. And you can see her gross profit and her zip code. So that's kind of a cool thing, right? Now, if you go down here, you'll see something called blank. You see that? There's a blank right there. So what happened here? Maybe we have a new store, right? Maybe we have a new store, or maybe we fired the manager at that store and we haven't replaced that manager yet, right? So suppose we just replaced that manager. Well, how do we update this? Instead of having blank there, how do we update it? Well, we got to find the zip code number, right? The zip code number is 95899. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my source file. I'm going to go to my source file here on the H drive if you're in Westminster Anywhere or on a classroom computer. Find the PowerBI tutorial folder. I'm going to go into my managers table, right? Click on the managers table here. And then I'm gonna look for that zip code, right? I'm gonna look for the zip code here. Okay, what was that zip code again? The zip code is 95899. So is there is there 95899? Let's do this. Let's sort by zip code. Is there 95899? Let's find out. There is no 95899, so we're going to add it at the bottom. 95899. Is that right? Let me double check. I haven't had enough coffee this morning. 95899. Okay, cool. And what's the name of the manager? I don't know. Remember, this is hypothetical data, so I'm going to put in Marty McFly from the main character in the Back to the Future movies, Marty McFly. Okay. I'm going to close it out and save it. And notice when I click refresh, what's going to happen. If I come up here and I click refresh, that name's going to go away. It might take a while because there's a lot of data they have to import. You have to refresh all the tables with this data, right? What it's doing right now is replacing all that data that's in those tables with the data that's in the Excel files, right? So it's replacing. So it's got to go through and do all that. Ooh. We're almost done. And you notice over here, if we did it right, the name changes, Marty McFly, right? So we've just added our new manager's name, right? So if you click on a bar and you click on it again, it'll reset the map. So there's no more filtering, right? All right, so the next chart we're going to create is a line and clustered column chart. Line and custom column chart. Line and custom column chart. Line and stack column chart. Line and clustered column chart. We're going to click on that. Okay. Now I'll make this halfway, right? Now what's going to be in here is we're going to have gross profit percentage, and then we're going to do product. We're going to do product, the name of the product. Now you get two sets of bars. The blue bars are for gross profit, right? The black bars here are for gross profit percentage. And the reason why they're so small is because they're numbers between 0 and 1, they're percentages, right? Where these are millions of dollars. So we want to, this is not very visually pleasing. We can't see what's going on here, right? So when we come over here to the visualizations area, you look down here, you got the product, the name of the product on the axis here, right? But then the column values, we got gross profit and gross profit percentage. So what we want to do is we want to drag gross profit percentage to the line values. See that? We want to go to line values. And when we do that, we can see now over here, these are the percentage. This is the percentage in vertical axis. And this is the gross profit in millions, right? So these are numbers between 0 and 4 million. And these are numbers between 0 and 1, right? Or 0 and 100%, same thing, right? So now we can see that gross profit percentage, the product with the highest gross profit percentage is Aspen, right? But the product with the highest gross profit is Quad, right? And then if you click on the bar, you're filtering, right? You're filtering your chart by Quad. And the dark blue are the Quad sales, and the light blue are company-wide sales, right? Light blue represents company-wide, okay? So if you want to look at gross profit as a percentage, right? The product with the highest gross profit percentage is Aspen, and it looks like Merlin Croft has the highest gross profit percentage for Aspen, right? And then it also alters the map here too, right? See that? It alters the map. So this is a filter. You can use these bars as a filter, which is kind of cool, right? All right. Next chart is going to be the same exact chart, except instead of doing product, we're going to do payment type. So again, we want to do a line and clustered column chart. Make sure you're clicking in the white area. If you do this, right, if you click that and then you click it over here, whoops, see that? Oh, whoops, let me delete this. If you accidentally change the type, right, if you actually change the type, you can just go back over, you click on it again, the one that you messed up, and you can go back and just fix it, right? Here we go. Line and clustered column chart. So after you get it fixed, you want to click in the white area, and then you want to click on line and clustered column chart for another one that looks just about like it, right? And I'll make this skinnier. There you go. All right. Now we're gonna drag into it or click on gross profit and gross profit percentage. And then instead of doing product type, we're gonna click on payment type. So payment type is now the shared access. The column values are gross profit, which are in millions, and gross profit percentage, which are between 0 and 1. We're gonna drag this down to line values to separate out the axes. Okay. So the product with the greatest or the payment type with the greatest gross profit percentage looks like cash, right? So cash has the highest gross profit percentage. But if you look at in terms of dollars, Visa has the highest gross profit, right? Okay, kind of cool, right? So now you can filter on type of payment, right? You can filter on type of payment, and you can compare your debit Visa, right, the dark blue, to the overall company, right? You can compare Visa to the overall company. Or you can click on this to compare in-store. I think in-store is like store credits, right? When you return something, they might give you a debit card. And so you're using store credit for that. You look at cash, how cash performs to everything, how MasterCard performs to everything, right? It looks like in Seattle with Arcella Stacy, PayPal is pretty big, right? Visa's biggest in Arcella Stacy store. So that's pretty cool, right? Now, the next thing we want to do is we're going to create a slicer. We're going to create a slicer for state. So I'm going to reset this whole thing. So you got to find slicer over here. So you just kind of go through it until you find slicer. Notice we can do R or Python visuals, right? We're going to do a slicer, and we'll put it over here in the corner. And all you got to do is click on state. Okay. And now you can slice by state. Okay. So we can compare, we can do a dashboard based on the state, right? Washington, I think, has most stores, right? It looks like Washington has the most stores. Or maybe California does. California has like maybe one or two more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. It's got 13 stores. Washington State has 2, 4, 6, 7 stores, right? Oregon has 5 stores or 6 stores, right? Mexico's got 6. Nevada's got. So that's how you can do that. Now, another way to slice is to do it this way. I'm going to turn this into a drop down. Okay. And then you can click the drop down and then make your choices, right? All right. So I'm going to do that. Whoop. Okay. Another way to slice it, if you want to compare a state to corporate as a whole, you can just create a chart, right? Just create a chart. So here we're going to do gross profit, and then by state. So you can slice it up here, right? You can slice it up here, or you can slice it down here, Arizona. And now you can see which managers are in Arizona and how well they do to their colleagues in different states. And you can see how Arizona does on each of these categories relative to corporate, right? So that's another way to slice, is just use a bar graph to slice. Okay, I think that's pretty cool, right? Okay, what's the next thing we want to do? We want to create a table. We want to create a table. So the way you create a table is you can click on multi-row card. And what are we going to put in that table? We're going to click on all the summation symbols. So the ones with summation symbols: cost of goods sold, units, net revenue. Now, is there anything we can do to these? Yeah, we can calculate the minimum, the average, and we can just do the sum. I think the default is sum, right? All right, I'll come back to that in a second. We're going to create a multi-row card. Let's create a multi-row card for the measures, right? Let's click on the measures here. Okay. Now, if we click on this, on a measure, we can't average, right? Because remember, the measure is a sum. All the measures could be averages too, but we just decided to do sums, right? So these measures could have been sums or averages, but we've done sums, right? So if you're going to create a multi-row card for these measures, all you can do is click on them and you get the sums, right? Which is not a bad thing, right? So we have the total gross profit for the company. We have gross profit for Washington State, California. See, it's summing gross profit right there, right? For Oregon, right? So let me move this over here. So these are our, well, wait a minute, let me do this. I'll move these over here by the state stuff, right? Okay, so we can see how these change. This height here is that value there, see that? This height here for Oregon is that value there, see that? So our biggest state by far is Washington State, and then California, and then Oregon, right? Okay, so going back to this here, these are variables, numerical variables, right? Cost of goods sold, net revenue, and units. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of, I'm going to just have net revenue here, right? So I got the net revenue, and it's the sum, right? It's the sum. Okay, so this number here is the same as that number there. See that? If I click on Washington State, this number goes down to 8.867, and total revenue over here goes down to 8.867, right? So these two things are the same thing, right? The sum, right? But I can change that. Since I already know the sum right here, I can do the average instead. It's like I get the average net revenue, right? The average net revenue. Okay, now this is kind of cool. I can drag net revenue in here 4 more times, and I can calculate a bunch of different statistics. Right? Drag it in 1 more time. I can change this to the median. I can change this one to standard deviation. I can change this one to the minimum. And I can change this one to the maximum. And then I can also have the sum, right? I can also have the sum. The sum, right? The sum is the same as that, right? See that? All right, so I'm gonna create another multi-row card. Right? This time I'm gonna use cost of goods sold. Okay, notice the cost of goods sold here are the same, because this right here is the sum, and this is a measure for sum, right? If I filter by Washington State, these two things are equal to each other, right? See that? Well, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change this to whoop, I think I had the wrong thing. I wanted cost of goods sold down here. There we go. Cost of goods sold, right? So now I can change this to the average. Then I can drag the cost of goods sold into here. If it's got a summation symbol in it, you can take the average of it. You can calculate the standard deviation. You can find the minimum and the maximum, and then you can do the sum, right? We're going to change this to median. We're going to change this to standard deviation. We're going to change this to minimum. We'll change this to maximum. And then just for illustrative purposes, we're going to just leave that as sum, right? So this, again, is that value. So we've got a redundancy in here, right? This is the average, the median, the standard deviation, the min, and the maximum. Notice that the median and the standard deviation are far apart, right? So this data set is heavily skewed. Now, the last thing we can do, well, not maybe the last thing, we can do another multi-row card. And this time, we'll do the multi-row card on units. So we can have, we can drag the units in here several times. What, 6 times? The first one is going to be average, right? Because you can see that the sum is the same as, oh, I don't have units over here. Let me do this. Let me add units. Oh, never mind, because units is not a measure. Okay, so we're going to change this to median. We're going to change this to standard deviation. We're going to change this to minimum, this to maximum, and then this to sum. It's already sum, right? Okay. Now, we don't really need, again, we have redundancy here, right? We don't really need that because it shows up right here. We don't need that because it shows up right there, right? So for this multi-row card, we can get rid of net revenue. This multi-row card here, we can get rid of cost of goods sold, right? But this one doesn't show up over here, so we're going to keep that one. So what I'll do is I'll move it over here and just spread this and rearrange it. All right. Now, the last thing we can do is we can do another slicer. We can do one last slicer here. Okay, yeah, we'll do one more slicer. How about that? And this, oh, we can do a couple slicers. Hang on. We're going to do one slicer for retail sales, type of sale, sales type. Okay, we can do wholesale versus retail, right? A better way to do that, though, might be this. A better way to do this would be due to a bar. Change that to a drop-down menu. Okay. A better way to do this sales type would be just to do a bar graph. So if I drop a bar graph in here, I could do sales type and then gross profit. And then I click on the bar. I could compare wholesale, right, to company-wide in light blue, or retail to company-wide in light blue, right? So dark blue here is retail, light blue is company-wide, right? Notice this height doesn't change. These heights don't change when I go from wholesale to retail. Only the dark blue bars change, right? So this might be a better way to slice it, right? This might be a better way to slice it. Why is that thing showing up right here? There it is. Okay. So I can slice it here, which will only show me retail stuff. But if I undo that and I want to look at the retail stuff, I can look at it retail versus all other, right? So this person has more retail than wholesale, right? These people all have more retail, more wholesale than retail, because the length of the bar out here is total. Length of the blue bar is wholesale. Length of that blue bar is retail, right? Is there any, oh, we can do date. We can do the date. Last thing, we're gonna do the date. We'll do a date slicer. I'll move this map up a little bit. We'll do a date slicer right here. So we're gonna click on slicer. We'll put date in here. So all I gotta do is click on the date. And it gives me slider, right? Okay, so we can shrink up the time period to see how different periods do, right? We can choose it by month, right? Beginning time period to ending time period, or we can just use the slider here to see how we do in time. All right, so the next thing you want to do is you want to share it with me. So you want to click on publish and then save. I haven't saved it yet. Good thing it hasn't crashed. Now it takes me right to where my source files are, right? So that's kind of cool. Power BI tutorial. And then I'll put snar at the end. And I'll save that. Okay, then you want to click on My Workspace and then click Select. And then it's gonna produce a link here to a website because it's publishing your dashboard to a website. And there's the link right there. That's a web link right here, right? So you want to click on that web link, it'll take you to the website. And you'll see your dashboard on the internet. And you can share it to people. Okay. I gotta log in, I guess. Okay. So this is my Power BI page. This is the PowerBI.com website, right? There's my picture, my Westminster ID, right? So I'm logged in. So then you want to click share. And then you can just type my name. Now you might have to log in. Don't pay for anything. Do the free trial. So just click on stuff. Do not enter a password. Don't enter any payment information. Click try for free. Because every Westminster student, if you're logged into, if you have a Westminster student account, you have a license to Microsoft Office right? Which means you have a license to Power BI. So sign into your Microsoft Office account using your Westminster credential, right? And then once you've done all that, you want to share it with me, right? Once you're signed in, right? I'm signed in. Using your Westminster credentials, your Westminster account, you can click on share, and then all you have to do is type the first part of my email address, and you'll see me show up. There's my email address. You click that, and you can click send. I'm not going to click send because I don't want to send this to myself, right? So you can send that, or you can copy the link too, right? You can copy this link, and then you put in your LinkedIn profile, and you can share it with people via LinkedIn. All right, so that's the tutorial, and that's kind of how you're going to do the project. All right, have a good day.